Multi-tools haven't really changed that much in the last 40 years. Companies have certainly tried new things, but in general, we have the same basic concept and platform. You know, a cast plier head that's shaped in a certain way, you know, two folding out handles, and so on and so forth. If what happens in this tool becomes mainstream, it will make a big shift in the multi-tool market. And that is assuming that the claims are actually true. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, before we get to the big news, let's talk about this really, really inexpensive budget multi-tool you can find on AliExpress, probably eventually on Amazon as well. This is a true Leatherman Signal clone. Now, we've seen hybrids that are available already on Amazon for around $30 to $35 depending, but they are really not Signal clones because they actually have a lot more outer components. This actually only has 2 outer long implements and it actually keeps it a little bit lighter. So let's go ahead and check out the weight. This is coming in at exactly 8 ounces in comparison to the Leatherman Signal, which is 7.5. So half an ounce more. And it is definitely bigger. You can definitely see the difference in size here. So that's probably what's compensating for the overall weight difference. In concept, it is the same, but it is actually quite different in many, many ways. So the first one is the way this, this ferrocerium rod and whistle function. I actually much prefer this one to the one we find in the Leatherman Signal. So we actually have to open it up and then we can pop out the component here. And you'll notice the plastic comes up on the side almost all the way. There's very little exposure to the ferrocerium rod whatsoever. And I've run into this issue for anyone who's actually used it. Those little plastic knobs, they basically stop it from functioning after maybe 50 strikes. The whistle is probably a bit of a wash. I'd say they're about the same. But the fact that the ferrocerium rod is so much harder to get access to and you don't get to use all of it is kind of a big deal. And this is much, much better of a solution, and it's also easier to access, which I do approve of. I actually kind of like this little change. And it is secure enough. It really does feel like it's decently secure. You have to get in here and actually pull this out, which is overall, I'm pretty happy with. It clicks in nicely. Yeah, good. Okay, carabiner. Pretty much also kind of the same basic deal. Not much different here. I will say this one doesn't have that kind of curve that is on the Leatherman Signal. The spring tension is about the same, similar. I'd say this is a little bit weaker than the Signal. But other than that, it's about similar. Now, the actual hammering end is quite different because this tool incorporates an inline bit driver. Now, this, unfortunately, which I think is really dumb, uses these included 5mm bits. I don't know why they use 5mm bits. It's really silly to me to not go with the 4mm bits. And in fact, because I cut my hand earlier today, having a little bit of trouble, it fits right in there and locks in, and you actually have an inline driver, which when you're using the Signal with its bit driver, you can't close it all the way because of that hammer. So like it goes like that. Now you certainly can hold this, but actually in practice, this is what I usually do. I usually hold it like so, and then screw it in, usually with 2 hands. And that keeps me from accidentally jumping out of the fastener. I'm sorry, yeah, out of the fastener. So that is how I prefer it. Now this, I'm not a huge fan of the 5mm because literally I don't even know how you would find these as replacements. But the fact that it's, you know, a $20 tool or less than a $20 tool, I can forgive some things. And that's one of the things I could probably forgive here, because other than that, it's actually decent. Even if you throw this away, I actually think it's quite nice. Now, looking at the blade, now I will point out that I purchased this myself from AliExpress. The grind on this is surprisingly even. It is thinner behind the edge than the Leatherman Signal is, which is very thick, and this is also partially serrated, whereas this is not. We have 440A steel, I believe, on this one, where you have 420HC on the Leatherman Signal. Now, the Leatherman Signal is going to have the sharpener. It's a big difference between the two, and this does not have that. So that's an important distinction as well. If we open this up, and this is really cool, there's a spring tension keeping this in. And I actually really like that solution, because if you don't lock this little mechanism here, it can kind of flop out on you pretty easily. Like it's not spring tension or anything like that. You have to use that lock to keep it from opening when it's in your pocket. And this one actually has some decent spring back, which I actually kind of like a little bit. Now, the other thing that I should point out that's significantly different is the length of the saw. For whatever reason, I guess it's not too big of a difference, but they decided to put a screw right here, which kind of shrinks how much space you have available for the saw. So this one actually, even though it's smaller, has a longer saw. That's important to note. And it's obviously going to be a slightly better steel as well. The thing though is that this is technically a two-handed saw. Now I can reach back and manipulate it one-handed, but this one actually has a cutout. It is still tapered, so it's thicker at the teeth than it is the back, which it needs to be to not get stuck in wood. I would love to have it a little bit longer, but overall it's perfectly fine. Now, when we open this, this is also a big difference. There is no bit driver. You saw that with the bits that it's definitely going to be a little bit different from the internal setup. If we go back to the Leatherman signal, we have, in addition to the bit driver, we have a reamer awl right here, as well as a can opener, bottle opener with wire stripper combo. So those are the two tools in here, whereas this has a flathead, large flathead, bottle opener, reamer awl, and can opener. Now, they could have absolutely gone with a hybrid can opener setup, which should have been the solution, and then figured out something more useful to put in here, like, I don't know, a chisel, for instance, which would have a locking chisel, which this does lock, would have been a very nice tool for different types of woodscraft. So it allows you to remove notches in wood a little bit easier. That would have been a much more preferable tool, among other things. And also this flathead with the file, I don't understand why they do this, because it just weakens the flathead overall. But I like the shape of the flathead that they did include. And the reamer awl is nice and narrow, so it'll drill some great holes. And in some ways, I like it actually better than the one on the Signal, because it's just a finer tip. I prefer that, and I think it drills a little bit better. Now, plier head. This is interesting. So I have a much older Leatherman Signal. The new one has the shitty cutters, which I don't even want to talk about anymore, because I think I've said it so many times, which has the little gap right there at the bottom. This does not. But you want to talk about gap? There's some gap for you. So one big drawback with these is these are not going to be good for hardwire. Like, these are terribly designed for hardwire, like absolutely awful. And they do come with spare cutters. I will say they do come with spare cutters, but why bother if you're not going to close all the way? Anyway, so that is something of note. So that's definitely a downside, but I do really like the plier head on this. It's got more of a triangular shape, similar to the Leatherman Free series, which in the past, Leatherman has said was their strongest plier ever, and that include the Surge plier head. So as they start to improve, and with a lot of these clones, you're going to start seeing this triangular approach a little bit more often, because it is a stronger shape overall. It provides more width here, and creates less weak points on the plier head. At least that's what I would assume. Now, this one is not spring-loaded, so that also improves its strength a little bit, just like with the Leatherman Signal. Yeah, needle nose, normal plier section, everything's lined up pretty good, and actually there's no movement left to right, so that's actually also quite impressive. For $20, which is what I paid for it, that's not bad at all. I got two variations. I got a black, which I just opened this one. I actually kind of like the black. I thought it was going to be a shit paint job, but actually this is it's actually pretty solid. It's not a bad coating, frankly. Better than I expected it to. Much, much better than I expected. A lot of times these cheap tools come with like basically a painted finish, but I'm not sure that's the case here. It's hard to tell. Same problem with the plier head, but plenty smooth out of the box. I'm okay with that. Okay, Fine, yeah, and that's the same, it's exactly the same with this one. So sheath, spare cutters, and the bit kit. This is everything you're gonna get, plus the sheath. All right, so let's move on from that. A decent option, I gotta say, this one does not go into the bucket of shame. This one is actually decent, especially because of the blade grind. They did a surprisingly good job on this blade. I think they would have been much better off putting 440C in this. 440A is just strictly worse, and it would go a long way in making people interested. They could also go with an HCR13 MOV, and that would also be a big deal because there aren't that many tools with that steel either, kind of bringing it up to a baseline knife steel. Okay, now let's get into the big topic of the day. On the surface, these tools are not anything special to write home about. I have talked about similar tools in the past that became really popular about 2 years ago. Right before, just right after the patents for the Leatherman Wave, Surge, and so on expired. And that means that like those tools that were good before the patent expiring, they've all fallen down now that we are seeing incredibly well executed clones of the Leatherman Wave and Surge, which are all completely legal. There is one thing about this tool that, well, is the big deal here, and that is the plier head itself. Now, this is a spring-loaded plier head. The shape is similar to other things we've seen. In fact, it's kind of built a little bit more robustly. It reminds me a lot of the center drive plier head. But why this plier head is such a big deal, and I've only seen a couple of videos on it so far, they are claiming that this plier head is made of 2 pieces that are punched from a solid sheet of steel and then CNC. Now, I've seen the process of the CNC to make these, and so I don't deny that part, but I have yet to see the video showcasing these plier heads being punched out of the steel. Now, why is this so unbelievable? Up until this point, and that includes the Leatherman Signal, and it includes the Leatherman Surge, and includes pretty much every single Leatherman, Gerber, and so on out there, all of these plier heads are made of cast steel. Cast steel is significantly weaker, like by a lot, than any forge rolled plate of steel. The difference in strength is, they may as well not be comparable at all. Like, I cannot say enough. If this is actually forged, then I cannot imagine it being weaker than any plier head currently in existence. And that includes the dual force, which I've heard the plates are not even as hard as people expect. This would be a huge deal. The only tool in my memory that ever had a forged plier head that was CNC'd was the Multitasker, and that thing was $200 like 10 years ago, all right? This is currently on AliExpress for like $22, $24, something like that. Now, there's some reasons for it outside of the plier head, but even just for the plier head, this tool absolutely dodges the bucket of shame. In other words, it's not going to be ignorable. It is definitely something we have to take in consideration every time we talk about budget multi-tools. That plier head could end up being the strongest one we have available in a sheath style multi-tool carry. Now, the difference between these two is you have a titanium handle scales on this one, making it slightly more expensive, although I did see a listing of like 27 for this. I don't really prefer it because that's just adding weight for cosmetics, and I'm not down with that. If you are into it, it is available, but I don't really care. What I like a little bit better, believe it or not, is the G10. I think it has more than enough rigidity, and it doesn't impact the weight even remotely as much. Now, speaking of the weight, let's go ahead and check the weight here. 9.5 ounces, which, comparing it to other tools like it, is about the same as what I expected. That comes in about the same weight or just under the weight of a Super Tool 300. It is certainly not going to be a tool you can carry with a pocket clip. It doesn't even have one. It'll be a sheath carry. So with that context, let's take a look at the tool set. The saw here actually done surprisingly well. So I like that. I like it's really nice and sharp. It's got really smooth sides, which will make it easier to go through the wood. The only thing I will say is it feels a little bit too similar in dimension between the back and the front. So I'm sure it is slightly tapered. I would hope it is, but if it is, it's very, very minor. You really can't tell too much that it is tapered. We also have a crosscut file with some measuring devices and a little flathead pry on the end. I don't understand why anybody puts a stupid tool like this in any multi-tool. You've created now an infinite number of weak points for a hardened piece of steel that you're going to use to pry. Does that make any sense at all? Absolutely not. It makes zero sense whatsoever to combine these two things, and I am very much against it. And then on top of it, the measuring devices don't even start at the end because, well, it's not even flat, so you can't use it as a depth gauge of any type. You're literally just lining something up to measure. A completely wasted slot, in my opinion. All right, now on to slightly better news. We have a straight blade, which I do actually like the shape they went with. 440A on the steel, once again, kind of mediocre. On the very bottom of the barrel, but still better than a 3 or 5 CR. I will say that. So still better than 3 or 5 CR, but nothing to write home about, nothing at all. All right, so we also have the scissor here. This one is also in 440A. Now that does interest me because that appears to be a much better steel for this application than a 3 or 5 CR. So that part I like. That part is really good. And this scissor I've already tested a number of times. This one even feels a little bit better tuned. I'm not a huge fan of safety scissors because I miss out on the precision cutting capability at the very tip. With all of this here, yeah, it's technically better for a very specific context, but in the majority of instances, I would rather not have it. Now, I've ground one down and it works just fine, but it's definitely my preference. Good and bad with that. Now on the inside, and this is also quite interesting, we have a Leatherman style bit driver. Let me go ahead and grab this bit real quick. Now the way this grabs is using a magnet, so I'm not actually sure it'll work with this. Kind of, it sort of holds. It's not a very strong hold because the magnet is kind of off center in there. You can see it right there, bottom corner, meaning that it's not going to hold onto the bit nearly as well as the spring tension on the Leatherman, but that is what it's designed to do. It's designed to function with the Leatherman style bits, which are becoming more and more available because companies like Nextool are producing their own variations. I did notice recently that the price for the Leatherman bit kit miraculously went down by $6 on Amazon. Who would have thought? A little competition is a good thing. All right, so, sorry, a little jive there. So we have a flathead and pull cutter on this side to go along with the bit kit. These all lock, by the way. And then on the opposite side, we have the combination of reamer awl, which is the one in the middle, can opener, and we have this very strange flathead package opener thing. I don't understand. So you have a package opener kind of on the other side, or at least a pull cutter, which you can use for the same thing. You have this device, which could easily be used for the same purpose. And then on top of it, you decided to compromise this flathead in 2 different locations in order to, I don't know what, when this V-notch should have simply gone right here, which would make the most sense. And then this entire tool can be redesigned to be basically anything else. Like anything else. Right? I'm not super keen on this tool at all. You have essentially 2 additional items plus the pull cutter, all of which function as a potential package opener. You don't need a third one, especially if you're going to compromise the flathead. V-notch cutter should go somewhere where it doesn't create torque. Now you have this very small space that creates a weak point. So outside of the plier head, this isn't exactly like a tool that I'm super excited about. all of which can just be forgiven because the plier head is that good. What I would do with this is I would take out the plier head and fit it into some of the other platforms, which I know interchange with this tool, and utilize this incredible plier head. That's basically what I'm going to do with it. I also want to point out something interesting that was claimed here, is that these cutters are designed to fit Leatherman's Leatherman's tool. In fact, we're going to very quickly, we're going to take this apart real quick. So take the T8 bit out of this, and let's go ahead and let's see if we can actually exchange them. That would be quite interesting. All right, there we go. So there's the original Leatherman. Let's put those aside so we don't forget. And supposedly, now I don't think the plier is interchangeable, but okay, maybe I need something a little stronger for this. Hold it. All right, here we go. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy off. Okay, yeah, just a lot more tension on that. It's probably got a little bit of Loctite. Now this tool I do not believe came with a spare set of cutters, but let me double check that. Nope. Nice sheaths, though. I will say that. Decent sheaths on this one. Let's finish this off. Just for time savings, just kind of getting through it. All right, so let's take these off for a second. We're not going to use the same screws. Those are probably true for each one. So take those screws and leave those over here. And then let's try and install these cutters right there. And I can already tell you they're going to fit. So this company, whoever this is, my recommendation to them is as soon as you can, get these cutters available on Amazon as quickly as you can. Because this, right now, fixes an entire problem that needs to be addressed by Leatherman immediately, and that is the stupidity of changing the cutter geometry for one tool. While we're doing this, let me explain. Leatherman Waves plier head has been updated. When they did that, they had to change the cutter design. But they didn't. They changed it and basically made it so that every single other tool no longer has closure right there. Now you can see there's no light coming through. That is completely closed. And in fact, these fit surprisingly well. Yeah. So in addition to having a plier head, and actually since we have this open, let's see if we can see the mill marks. It's the mill channel. But I wonder, is there any indications that this is cast? I mean, I'm not trying to say they're lying. I'm only saying that I haven't yet seen these punched. And until I do, I'm going to hold and reserve my judgment. Because if it is truly forged, it is a seriously big deal. The fact that it uses cutters that are identical to the Leatherman is another big deal, and they should absolutely be selling these cutters separately as a pack of 2 for like, I don't know, $5 or $6. Yeah. So to conclude this video, what do I want to say? Forged plier heads are something people have wanted for a really long time. The costs that have been quoted for this type of plier head is usually very, very high. Even the Leatherman Arc and the 40th anniversary edition, none of those tools came with forged plier heads. So this would be a very, very big deal if it's true. I say that if. So it's kind of in this company's ballpark, you know, in their court, I should say, to prove that it is in fact from there. Now this is the company. Dakoyu, and I know that they make a bunch of, they are also stocking Wave and Surge clones and so on as well. But the big thing here is this tool. I want to see the receipts on the process behind this plier head. Because the moment we can buy a forged plier multi-tool under 50 bucks, it completely changes the market as far as a functional tool is concerned. It really does. It completely shifts things away from the way things have been done for decades. Yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it here, because this is a preliminary video. I'm going to need to see some more info. I will come back around when we have proven it one way or another. I will leave a pinned comment down below if I have found proof of the fact that these are forged or not. That's pretty much it for today. A very interesting set of tools that have potentially major implications for the multi-tool market. I am very interested to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. As always, thank you guys so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.